action around the NHL is starting to seriously heat up, and injuries are even going down across the league. Steele and I are here to break it all down for you on the Friday episode, including our top 5 bold predictions for the upcoming NHL season. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Less than 2 weeks away from the puck drop on the brand new NHL and fantasy hockey seasons means we're getting real serious on today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I am joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Roden, and on this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. We really, really appreciate that love. Seriously, Steele, we are fired up for hockey. And the fact that we even have some major injury news to talk about means that hockey is here. You never want to see a guy get hurt, but we're going to break down this Andrei Vasilevskiy situation. What do the Tampa Bay Lightning do to replace arguably the best goalie on the planet over the last better part of a decade? Back injury for Vasilevskiy. And then we're going to get to our bold predictions. Steele and I have been chomping at the bit to take a look at the crystal ball a little bit on the bolder side of things and see what shakes down for this upcoming season. Steele, I got a couple of bold ones. I got a couple of ones that I think make sense, though, so I'm excited to throw those past you. But why don't we talk about this Vasilevskiy situation? Back injury, 2 months. They were thinking it was maybe a little less serious than it is, but now obviously he is going to miss the better part of 20 or so games. We know this guy has been one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. 29 years old, getting up there a little bit. What's your take on this for a guy who's obviously right there as the most important piece for this Tampa Bay Lightning success?
Yeah, and we talked about this a lot, about all the miles on his body over the last 3-4 seasons. You know, the COVID year, playing 60-plus games pretty much every year. The Lightning really depend on this guy, and it finally caught up to him. We talked about him taking a little bit lesser of a role of being that starting goaltender because of the mileage on his body, and he's out for the next 2 months after having successful back surgery. The Tampa Bay Lightning are going to be treading water if they don't find someone to take his position, because it's not going to be Jonas Johansson, and it's not going to be the next guy in line behind Johansson and Hugo Alnefelt, you know, a prospect who's only played 20 minutes in the NHL, and Johansson, who's only played 35 games in the NHL. They're either going to have to go to the waiver wire, or they're going to start having to make some calls and make a trade for, you know, a starting goaltender, or at least a veteran goaltender, to get him in their place, because this is the toughest division. The Atlantic Division is by far the toughest division, with Buffalo and Ottawa and even Detroit on the rise. Boston doesn't want to slip down the standings as well. The first couple of months are going to be tough if they cannot fill that position, because like I said, it's not going to be those two guys.
We know how solid Vasilevskiy has been. This is a huge injury. Yeah, sure, 2 months, he's going to miss 20 games. There's a lot of the season he can be back for. But just to the fact that you mentioned, the Atlantic Division around them, what if Tampa Bay struggles out of the gate? What if they struggle even when he comes back? What's also a little bit interesting, Steele, is we've had rumblings out of Tampa Bay about them not even being very worried if Steven Stamkos were not to return. There's some things now starting to be cracked. We got some cracks in the armor here, Steele, for a squad that has been the most consistent across the NHL over the last handful of seasons. And I guess I just wanted to show Vazzy a little bit more love. 2021 Conn Smythe Trophy winner, 2019 Vezina Trophy winner, led the league in wins in 5 of the last 6 seasons, and was still pretty solid last year. .915 save percentage and a 2.65 goals against. But the goaltending market is thin out there, Steele. They're going to have to get creative. And now all of a sudden you combine that with the Stamkos news, the fact that we know the rest of the Atlantic Division is chomping at the bit to stick it back to the Tampa Bay Lightning after they have literally wiped the floor with many of these teams who are on the come up. It could be tricky here, Steele. And I'd be getting a little bit wary of the pressure that this places on some of their top fantasy pieces. Because the second things start to not go well, and we already have these rumors out there, I'm starting to get a little bit concerned about the Braden Points and Nikita Kucherovs of the world. Am I saying they're not valuable? Of course not. but this could start to play into the downfall a little bit of all of the Tampa Bay Lightning's fantasy pieces.
14, 13, 12 days away from the start of Drop Puck. I believe they are playing on the opening night as well. They might be, but they've got to make some calls, or they got to look towards the waiver wire. Maybe they go after someone like Yaroslav Halak, a guy who's been in the league for a long time. Maybe they look at Carolina because they've got 3 goaltenders in Antti Raanta. They target Antti Raanta, who's on a 1-year, $1 million deal. So there's some options for them, but they're going to have to think fast and do it quickly because they cannot go 2 months without Andrei Vasilevskiy and not having a veteran presence in that net for the start of the NHL season. Just a side note before we get into the bold predictions, I feel kind of bad because in my year-to-year league, Andrei Vasilevskiy slips down to the 3rd round, and one of my buddies on the Zoom call is like, hey, is there something wrong with Andrei Vasilevskiy? Like, is there something going on that I'm not aware about? And I shout out, no, he's good. You should draft him. So I feel a little bit bad now. I sent him a message in the group chat, but that's what happens. That's what happens when you draft a little bit early before the season starts. Some injuries start to pop out, and you just get, the bitter end.
And I think John Cooper was actually alluding to the fact when he spoke today or the other day that they thought it was going to be more of a day-to-day thing.
Yeah.
So maybe actually whatever was out there wasn't concerning. So I think you're being a good, honest GM, like I know you are, Steele. Let me be honest with you right now. I'm going to hit you with my first bold prediction, and I know this might be the boldest one on the list, but I'm just going to get it off the chest because from not only what I've been seeing, but mostly what I expect this season to shake out to, this one's going to make sense. The Chicago Blackhawks are straight up and down awful. And I know the Columbus Blue Jackets aren't much better, but here's my first prediction. Adam Fantilli outpoints Connor Bedard this season.
Wow,
it's bold.
Okay.
It's bold. But when you take a look at how strong and comfortable Adam Fantilli has looked, and I'm not taking away from Connor Bedard because we know how good he is, but this is what I'm talking about. He is getting the chance right now, Steele, to center the number 1 power play. And I know Bedard's going to get the chance to do a very similar thing and play on the top power play in Chicago. But look at the players that are around him. Johnny Gaudreau, Patrick Laine, Zach Werenski, and even a youngster in Kirill Marchenko. And then you look at the Chicago Blackhawks top power play. I don't know about this one, Steele. Tyler Johnson, Taylor Radish, Taylor Hall. I think it's clear which one we would rather go with. And if we're getting a little bold, I want to go with the guy who didn't get nearly enough love because of how good Bedard was in Fantili. Most other years, I think he'd go first overall, no problem. So that's the first off the board, Steele. Bold prediction number 1. I think a lot of people are overlooking Fantili and forgetting that losing is really hard on young players. And I'm not saying the Blue Jackets aren't going to do their fair share of losing, but the Blackhawks were dead last in goal scoring last year, and I think they struggled to score goals once again, and that is going to affect Connor Bedard's overall point performance.
We might have to have a little bit of a side bet to start off because that is a very bold take there. Adam Fantilli with more points than Connor Bedard. I like the hotness that we're starting off with for these. It is very spicy, but we're going to have a side bet there because I think when people are talking about Connor Bedard, they're already putting him almost in the same category as some of the elites in the NHL right now. And I understand Chicago is going to be a very poor team, but Connor Bedard is one of those players that can just take it over himself and elevate his teammates as well. So I think Columbus will have more points by the end of the season, but I think Connor Bedard will have more points by the end of the season over Adam Fantilli.
That's why it's bold predictions and not predictions that make a whole lot of sense. But hit me with your first one, and let's take it away here.
Number 5 on my list for top 5 bold predictions is the one that I've already mentioned to you, but I'll start off with it. My bold prediction, if the Winnipeg Jets are out of contention come March, Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele will both be traded from the Winnipeg Jets. I think if they're not even close or maybe even falling a little bit back by the time the trade line comes around, we could see those 2 players on the move to other organizations who will need a starting goaltender, who will need a first line centerman and bring that extra depth to their deep run in the playoffs. What's been going on with the Winnipeg Jets, and I know, Paul Maurice stepped down, Rick Bowness comes in, they strip the C off Blake Wheeler. Blake Wheeler goes to the New York Rangers. A lot of turmoil in Winnipeg over the last couple of years, and I still don't know if there is a locker room problem? Is there a coach problem? It just seems that it's still up in the air. We want the players to succeed, but if they can't figure it out, also Nikolai Ehlers goes down with another injury before the season even starts. That's
Ouch.
a shocker.
Yeah.
But I just don't see, again, we've talked about Josh Morrissey taking a little bit of a step back as well because he had such an incredible season last year. I just don't believe, again, we're on different pages of where the Winnipeg Jets will fall by the end of the season. I don't think they'll be in playoff contention or make the playoffs at least. And I could see both those players on the move by March.
My next couple of bold predictions, Steele, are actually going to focus on teams missing and making the postseason. So that's a nice little segue to come back around the break where we will have a bunch more bold predictions. But I'm with you here. Because, yeah, it's bold that they both go. Maybe in terms of what I expect from the Jets, it's bold to expect them to miss the postseason, but really it's not that much. But what I think I am agreeing with the most here is if they struggle, I think this team really needs to reset and start fresh. They're really starting to do that already. The Pierre-Luc Dubois trade is starting to bring the winds of change through a little bit. I like to say that. So this one makes a whole lot of sense to me, and I like that it's your quote unquote least bold. Mine are all bold. There's no real order or method to my madness here, Steele. So we'll get back to it right after the break. But we got to pay these bills, baby. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends at DoorDash. Missing the syrup for your pancakes, or you just ran out of your favorite coffee creamer? With DoorDash grocery delivery, you get what you want when you need it. Love the convenience of getting what you want right to your door? With DoorDash grocery delivery, you can stock up for the week or order last-minute cravings conveniently. Burnt your last piece of toast? Avocado's gone bad, or your hot sauce bottle is empty? Try the grocery delivery from DoorDash. You get everything that you want when you want it. I don't know what's better than that, Steele. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order for up to $25 when you use code LOCKED at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's $50 off up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code LOCKED. Don't forget, that's code LOCKED for 50% off your first order with DoorDash.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your favorite team from all four major sports leagues, including the NCAA, your team every single day. And let's continue on the top 5 bold predictions for this upcoming season. This is one of my favorites. It's also one of my boldest. At number 4 on my list, Philip Gustafsson breaks out for 35-plus wins, and Minnesota wins the Central Division.
Whoa!
That's I'm coming hot and spicy with the number 4 on my list. But I've talked about how the Minnesota Wild have been very underrated over the last couple of years. A lot of people don't watch them play. I understand they're later games over here on the East Coast or on the Eastern Standard Time. But I truly believe that they have it in them. And I know, they've got a couple of rookies coming in. Marco Rossi taking over the third center line position. Brock Faber, Kalen Addison, some young guys who are finally getting a crack in the lineup. But I really believe in this team. It might be a little bit biased, but I truly believe in Philip Gustafsson is on the edge of becoming an elite goaltender in this league. And I know it's only 3 seasons in the NHL for the young lad. But what he showed me last year, especially in the playoffs, and I know it was a tough matchup against the Dallas Stars in the first round. Another one of my favorite teams who can't seem to get out of the first round, it seems like. But I truly believe in Philip Gustafsson. I think Marc-Andre Fleury is going to continue to mentor him. And Kaprizov and Boldy are really just going to take off and take Minnesota on their backs alongside Philip Gustafsson.
Couple of things right off the jump, because I love this, because you know how high I've been on this player, and we got a couple of drafts coming up together, so we might be battling for this goalie. And you're gassing me up here, Steele, because I've been very high on this goalie for about the last season, and his numbers back us up. 22, 9, and 7 last year, 3 shutouts, 2.10 goals against, and a beastly 931 save percentage. If the Minnesota Wild can hold it down in front of him and allow him to really settle in his first full season as a number 1 goaltender. He is still young. He doesn't have a ton of number 1 goaltender experience, but I think that's the key. Can they play well in front of him to let him settle in? Because then I think this number is very much attainable. I'm really loving that angle. Can they win that division? That is for sure spicy, but let's just leave it at that, because we're close to getting some of these predictions are going to start to pan out in a hurry here, Steele. We're going to see how Bedard and Fantili start. We're going to see how the Wild kick off. So let's just leave. We'll revisit this predictions episode, maybe around the halfway point of the season, and see how we're doing. Let me get to a team that I think is getting a lot of love and has actually from us, Steele. But when I look at the Eastern Conference and I look at how I think it's going to shake down, Hurricanes, Devils, Rangers, maybe even Islanders in the Metro. You know the Leafs are in there, Lightning likely. Everyone's loving the Sabres. Even the Bruins are going to make noise. Senators. Did what the Pittsburgh Penguins do make them good enough to make the postseason? I'm going to say they miss right out, Steele. I'm going to say what they've done is not enough, and this team is going to miss their last window and shot at winning. I know they brought in Riley Smith. I know everyone's loving Erik Karlsson, but I think the rest of this team and some of these moves are not going to pan out. That's my prediction, Steele. There's way too many new bodies in Pittsburgh. Tristan Jarry, you and I love, but there's question marks there too. Can he stay healthy? I think they're at a tipping point. I think given how good we know that Metro division is with all those teams on top of them, I think realistically, even off the jump, they're immediately maybe the 7th or 8th best team in the East, and I don't think they're good enough to really hang. Let's see what happens, but I'm saying Penguins missed the postseason, and I know they did it last year, but it was by the slimmest of margins, and everyone's expecting them to be a postseason team this year, so I'm going to say no postseason for Mr. Dubas.
I'm with you. I don't have them finishing top 4 in the Metropolitan. I don't have them making the playoffs. So I'm with you on that. I don't know who it was from the Spit and Chicklets podcast, but someone also said that if they go off to a slow start to begin the season, Mike Sullivan could get the boot as well. So
there you go.
Who knows what might happen with the Pittsburgh Penguins? They bring a lot of new bodies in.
That's my concern.
They still have the age as well. They're still one of the oldest team, if not the oldest team in the NHL right now.
They're up
so
there.
Who knows? Crosby, Malkin, Gensel when he gets back, and if Jarry can stay fully healthy for the entire season, maybe they make a push for the postseason, but we don't believe that to be likely. Number 3 on my list, I think it's bold, but who knows with Connor McDavid? Number 3 on my list, McDavid hits 100 assists and plays 80 plus games. So hopefully he plays all 82 games, but he's going to have a 100 assist season this upcoming year. I think his goal total will drop back down to maybe like 55 or 60. He's still going to be around the same goals, but he's going to be passing the puck. He's going to be finding his teammates. Connor Brown again, little chemistry that they had with the Erie Otters for a year or so. But I think I'm going to go on a bold prediction right now and say Connor McDavid hits 100 apples.
I don't even think it's that bold considering he had 89 last year. This is why I think it's bold. And I like it. And I'm glad we had a little Connor McDavid prediction in here because I was looking at the Hart Trophy odds this morning, Steele, at plus 100. Connor McDavid, the fact that you're still actually getting plus money, this is his trophy to lose.
Yeah.
I would maybe sprinkle on one of the guys that I'm going to talk about at the end, though, for the Hart Trophy is going to be another threat this year. But we'll leave it at that for that tease. Connor McDavid, my one issue with this one, Steele, is considering that he shot the puck the most that we've seen him in his career last year, 352 shots on net, I thought I saw.
Yeah.
352 shots. I think he's realizing how good he can be when he fires that biscuit a lot more, meaning that maybe the passing game drops just a little, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe he's just so good that he's able to boast up both of those numbers because I also think triple digits every single season is what is the bare minimum for Connor McDavid, and 150 plus points is well within his realm. And when I talk about my next prediction, it's going to align very nicely for Connor McDavid doing very well. And if you're okay with it, I can pop off with my next one.
Well, we were just talking about how Alex Ovechkin a couple of seasons had 500 plus shots, and he was getting 40 or 50, 60 goals as well those years. So maybe he continues shooting the puck, but I think you're right. I think he can handle both shooting the puck more as as finding those teammates. So I don't know. Maybe he puts up another 60 plus goal season with 100 apples on the side. We'll get to that next prediction very, very fast. But thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, hit the follow button, leave a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support you have been showing us for the last couple of years. Could not be happier with how everything is turning out right now. We reached our goal of over 1,000 subs. Couldn't do it without everybody out there tuning in Monday through Friday. And we could not be more excited about the upcoming drafts for the Locked On Fantasy Hockey League, competitive and casual. Thank you so much for tuning in. Flip, I'll throw it back over to you now. What is your next bold prediction for this upcoming season?
So first of all, I fibbed a little bit. The prediction about the Oilers tying to McDavid, that's coming up in a sec. Let me start with a team. I just said a team that's going to miss. That might be a little bit bold. Let me hit you with perhaps my boldest prediction. Arizona Coyotes, baby. They're punching their postseason ticket, Steele. And let me explain very quickly why. Because I get it. The goaltending's a little suspect at times for sure. We're buying into Vejmelka, but after that, it could be a bit of a concern. The back end has a lot of question marks, but we like what's going on. And when I look at that division, now I know you and I disagree on the Minnesota Wild, who are now, according to you, winning the division, which is fine. But let's be realistic. After those top three, and we're going to, I think, both agree, Avs, Stars, and Wild are the de facto top three. There are a very open amount of slots here. Jets, Preds, Blues, and Coyotes. Why can't the Coyotes be better than the Blues, Predators, and Jets? That's how I'm looking at it. And then if they are, they could very much be in the mix for the final wild card bubble spot. And that's my prediction. I'm saying this team is good enough with the Logan Cooley's, the Dylan Gunthers of the world on the come up. You know, I love me some JJ Moser. They bring in Sean Durzi. They bring in Alex Kerfoot. They even bring in a little veteran presence in Jason Zucker to be there for these young guys, and Clayton Keller and Nick Schmaltz. Steele, we even love the Lawson Krauses of the world. There is a lot of fantasy value on this Arizona team, number one. And number two, if Vejmelka can step up a little bit, and we know he can actually be a very solid NHL goaltender, can he be a bona fide number one? If that happens, I'm even more so comfortable with this bold prediction that Arizona makes the playoffs. And you know that prediction would be a good one to sprinkle a little 10 or a 20 on if you're buying in to the spiciness of this take.
It is very spicy, and it also contradicts the Winnipeg Jets take a little bit that you had about them. It does contradict that, but I don't hate it. I don't hate the prediction because we both like what's going on in Arizona. I think, last year they were 28, 40, and 14. I think they're going to be above 500 team this next year. I think they're going to beat out the St. Louis Blues for 100%. I think the Nashville Predators are also another team that they can fight with. But again, I don't think they're going to make the postseason. That's why it's top 5 bold predictions, but they are trending that way. You might be a year too soon. I'll go with next year. Maybe a year or two, but I'll go with next year over this year. That is spicy take. Yep. Number 2 on my list. I've already talked about it, so I'm not going to go in depth, but this kind of goes with your first bold take about Fantili beating out Connor Bedard. I'm going with Devon Levi at plus 2,000 to win the Calder Trophy. That is my bold prediction. It's great odds, great money if it returns, and I think it will, because if Devon Levi, who will most likely be that number 1 starter for the Buffalo Sabres, if they get into the playoffs or even remotely get close to, and his stats are out there, I think no question he beats Connor Bedard out, because again, Connor Bedard, we know the capability, but Chicago is not going to be, a playoff contention team. They're not going to be in the postseason, but the Buffalo Sabres are most likely going to be one, because especially now with Tampa Bay losing Andrei Vasilevskiy, that gives them a bigger window to start the season off even hotter than they did last year and have consistency, and they can get that consistency with Devon Levi. So Devon Levi plus 2,000 on FanDuel, drop a $10, $20 bill on them. You'll thank me later.
Yeah, you and I have been all over that odd for the last couple of weeks, and that's just it. That's the main point that you just made that holds true here. If they make the postseason and he has been the number 1, his numbers are going to just by default have to have been good enough that he is very much in the mix. If he takes this team to the postseason in his first year, they're going to almost want to give him the Calder Trophy, because that's just such a good story. Unless Bedard does something absolutely sensational, which I guess isn't out of his realm, but considering everything that I just said, I'm going to say that maybe it's a better opportunity for Levi here on a much better team, Steele. Let's be honest. The Buffalo Sabres have a lot of very, very intriguing young offensive and now defensive pieces. So let's see what happens with that. I'll keep this one short and sweet, because I want to leave what I think is my favorite prediction for the end. The Stanley Cup champion comes out of the West this year. That's number one. That's bold enough as it is, considering how much we like the East. But my favorite two teams, and this is my bold prediction, the Stanley Cup winner this year is going to be one of two Western Conference clubs. And when you look at the odds on FanDuel, shout out to FanDuel, at plus 1,300, you have the Dallas Stars with the fourth shortest odds. And at the third shortest odds, you have the Edmonton Oilers. So maybe this isn't a bold prediction because of those two facts that I just stated. But when you look at how good the Eastern Conference is, and I think we would lean to, and let me bring up FanDuel once again, Carolina at plus 900, New Jersey Devils at plus 1,100, maybe the Leafs at plus 1,100, the favorites at plus 850, the Colorado Avalanche. I think it's the Stars or Oilers this year, Steele. And I wanted to do one bold prediction about the Stanley Cup. And I'm hedging here, baby. I'm throwing out two teams, but I really do think it's going to be one of those two teams. And if Stuart Skinner can be the guy, that's the question for me in Edmonton. And can the Dallas Stars repeat the amazing offense that they did last year? Because I think we know they're sound on the back end, but they were a top 5 offensive team last year. Jason Robertson stood out in a big way. Rupe Hint stood out in a big way.
Yeah.
Can they do it again? Both guys at that level don't have a ton of sample size, Steele. But if they can, they get it done too. So my prediction is one of those two teams is lifting Lord Stanley this year.
That is a spicy take at that. That's why it's in the top 5 bold predictions. Of course, I'm also, I'm not as far from my last prediction for the Stanley Cup, but I'm talking about the Eastern Conference Finals. My last prediction, the Toronto Maple Leafs make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, or at least the Eastern Conference Finals. I think they make it to the Stanley Cup Finals as well. But they're going to make it to the Eastern Conference Finals regardless. And again, this goes back to now that Tampa's without Andrei Vasilevskiy, the Boston Bruins lose Patrice Bergeron. You don't think the Florida Panthers have it in them to even be a playoff team. This is a tough division, but by far the Maple Leafs, this is their division to lose. They need to win this division, get home ice advantage throughout the entire postseason. And if they somehow slip up and don't come first in this Atlantic division, I'm going to be absolutely pissed off. It's going to be terrible. No. But bold prediction, last one of the day, Toronto Maple Leafs make the Eastern Conference Finals. I think they have everything that they really need to have right now. Maybe you can address a goaltending position, but I still really like Ilya Samsonov. If Joseph Wall has to come in, I believe in the kid as well. Maybe you need to address the defensive line again, but let's see what John Klingberg does. Let's see how Jake McCabe and Mark Giordano hold up. Connor Timmins looked pretty good in the preseason. Timothy Liljegren, bringing his A game as well. Obviously, we still got TJ Brody and Morgan Riley as the top D pairing, which I absolutely love. I think they have everything they need right now. Max Domi, Tyler Bertuzzi, Ryan Reeves into the lineup. They've got some young guns and Nicholas Robertson hopefully cracking the lineup as well. I really like what the Leafs lineup is looking like right now. And hopefully those top 4 guys, Marner, Nylander, Tavares, and Matthews, can bring their A game in the playoffs and take them to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Matty Nyes is also looking real good already in the preseason as well, Steele. I think, though, after this injury to Vasilevskiy, and I know it's 2 months, and I know it's one guy, but it's their number one goaltender, and he has been the best goaltender in the world. It's massive, right? So I think what you're saying, too, I'll ratchet it up a notch. It's now even more so their division to lose. And if they don't capitalize on this opportunity by, let's just be fully honest, whoever Tampa Bay runs out there, whether it is they pick up a Halak or they run out Johansson, whoever it is, there are so much of a different squad without Vasilevskiy anchoring that back end that the Toronto Maple Leafs better just take it to them in the first couple of games that they take Tampa, because once Vasilevskiy comes back and things start to right, their Tampa Bay is going to be taking receipts if Toronto lays a beating on them at the start of the season.
Yeah.
But doesn't that segue very nicely into my last bold prediction, Steele? Because I can't come on here and make some bold predictions and not talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. So I like that we both kept our Leafs takes for the end. Auston Matthews. I've been talking about him. I've been talking about him a lot. I've been talking about him as a breakout candidate, a bounce back candidate. And at plus 1,000, Steele, if you jump on the award train, FanDuel's got Mr. Matthews at plus 1,000 for that Hart Trophy. I know I just talked about Connor McDavid at plus 100, and there's not a ton of value there at plus 1,000, and that is his trophy to lose. But when I think about this situation for Matthews, a lot of hate thrown his way in the offseason yet again. A lot of question marks thrown at his ability to lead. What does he do? He comes back. He has it a shorter deal than what we wanted. He re-ups with this team. He doesn't jump ship. He doesn't even talk about maybe not re-signing. He gets it done. And I think from what I've seen in his offseason regimen, what I've seen from him already on the ice practicing and a little bit of preseason, this guy is going to go off. He's rounded his game into form. He is going to bring it at both ends of the ice. And I'll tell you this, Steele, if he goes back to even close to that 60 goal plateau and he takes the Rocket Richard this year and he's killing penalties and the Leafs win the division, I don't even care about what McDavid does. He will be a finalist for this trophy, one that we know he
100%.
can win already. I think you expect a really, really big season from Matthews, one in which is good enough to have him in the mix for the Hart Trophy.
We always got to talk about the Maple Leafs when we're talking about 5 bold predictions. I love that one for sure, especially at plus 1,000, getting some great odds right there.
Mm-hmm.
And if he does exactly what you just listed off, there's no question that he's going to be a finalist alongside Connor McDavid and maybe even beat him out for it as well if they can finish top of the division and top of the NHL if that happens. So those are the 5 bold predictions from Flip Livingstone and your boy Steele Roden. We're getting it done here on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We got a fantasy draft later tonight and tomorrow for the Fantasy Hockey Listener League. We appreciate everyone out there. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Make sure you're tuning in Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning. Listen on your way to work, at the gym, going for a walk whenever you can. Tune in. Thank you again for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets tonight, and we shall see you back here again on Monday.
Peace.